Joining us today, I am very pleased to welcome for the first time to the Northern Miner podcast, at least while I'm working here, is Element 29 Resources President and CEO, Steve Stakiw. Steve, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Adrian.
So you are at Element 29 Resources. Tell our listeners about the company. Maybe they haven't heard of it or have just heard about it in passing. Could you help fill in the details on what's going on at the company?
Certainly. Element 29 Resources, we're a fairly new company. We launched just over a year and a half ago via an IPO, and we're focused on Peru and specifically on copper projects in Peru. So we have, what we think are two very, high quality porphyry copper projects in Peru, being Elida and Flor de Cobre. And the company is really focused on taking these projects from the drill stage and moving them up the ladder, as they say, de-risking them towards resource delineation. And just recently, we've successfully put out our initial mineral resource on one of the projects, Elida, and we aim to have a second mineral resource out before year end on our other main project, Flor de Cobre. So a lot of exciting things in the pipeline, and we see that as a great pathway for Element 29, really to evolve from that. From the explorer, drilling stage company to a potential resource developer.
So how did you come across these properties?
Good question. These projects were actually were found and secured by a company called Globetrotter Resources, and they're a private project incubator company, and we were created from that. So there's a lot of common management between the two. So some of the principals of Globetrotters saw the opportunity to take a couple of what they saw as their top tier copper projects in Peru and put them into a vehicle to IPO, and that's how Element 29 came to be at the end of 2020.
Fascinating. And so you are in Peru. Tell us about working in Peru. Sometimes people have raised questions, but traditionally it's one of the best places to work. And of course, a lot of the world's copper is in Chile and Peru. Tell us a little bit about Peru and just your experience working there and how you feel about it.
Yeah, we've worked as a team, cumulatively, we've worked in Peru for, at least a decade and a half now. We're very comfortable with the jurisdiction. And as you correctly identified, Peru is a top, copper producing jurisdiction. It's number 2 in the world after Chile. So it's a big producer. So it's a great place to be looking for copper. It's very well endowed in copper mineralization with deposits, distributed, throughout the country. So there's lots of exploration potential within the country as well. So it is a great jurisdiction to be working in. Politically, as a jurisdiction, we like it as well. People see a lot of news about projects and opposition to mining projects, throughout Latin America and South America. We find Peru is still a great jurisdiction on that front. If you look at what's happening on the mining and mineral development front in the country, mines are getting permitted, and mines are getting built. Exploration projects are getting permitted, like we've done with both of ours. We've drilled and we're taking them to the resource stage. And as a jurisdiction, it is one of the lowest cost. If you look at, copper miners globally, it's slightly behind Chile, but it is one of the lowest cost jurisdictions in the world. We like that. And if you look at, what's happening in the country, you see a number of majors like, Anglo American at their big Quellaveco copper mine, which is not far from our Flor de Cobre project in the southern Peru copper belt, and others. Over the last year, there's been several billion in investment to develop and build mines. And really, if it wasn't a good jurisdiction, that money wouldn't be invested in the country. So I think that's a great endorsement of the country as a jurisdiction, and we're very happy to be operating there.
So I think a lot of investors are pretty excited about copper right now. And so what do you think you have at these properties here? Like, what is the story on these properties?
Yeah, no, for sure. Copper, we all know, the copper macro thesis is certainly very bullish, in terms of, forecast copper, demand, moving towards a green economy and supply. So we're really at a point where it's, we're at, historical all-time lows in terms of copper inventory versus demand. And that looks like it's going to get even tighter over the next several years. So we think we're well positioned as a copper explorer developer. So what we're moving forward on is really to delineate copper resources. We see an opportunity to build that within Element 29, ultimately moving towards a development pathway. Just recently, we've highlighted at our Elida copper deposit in west central Peru, our inferred mineral resource. So this is our very first resource that we've put out there. And we've delineated, about 322 million tons, grading 0.32% copper, 0.03% molybdenum, and 2.6 grams per ton silver. and that's at a point 0.2 copper cutoff grade. And that equates to about, just on the copper front, that's about 2.2 billion pounds of contained copper, or just over 1 million tons. That's a very significant initial resource. And we see a great opportunity to grow that within the deposit. That's only on one of 5 identified porphyries, which are the mineralizing systems where the copper mineralization is hosted, that we've identified on the property. And we've just recently started a phase 2 drill program on that as well. So we see great potential. And, even within the Zone 1 deposit, that's not even fully drilled off yet. So we haven't defined the boundaries of that. So there's even room to grow that initial resource on Zone 1 on top of the other targets on the property.
Okay, excellent. And probably a question you get pretty often is one project sort of, do you see one as, your flagship project and another as a secondary project? Can you speak to that?
Yeah, no, that is a good question, and it does come up. People always, want to know where's your focus, and we're kind of blessed that we actually have what I would call 2 flagship projects between Elida, as I just discussed with our initial, mineral resource there on that copper deposit with its growth potential, but also on our Florida Cobre project, which is down in the southern Peru copper belt. We finished up a drill program there earlier this year. And we're in the process of calculating our initial mineral resource estimate on the Candelaria copper zone there. So, that's pretty exciting. So, we're really advancing what I think, moving the company, up that ladder to having 2 mineral resources out. So, our goal is really to build, copper resources. And I think we're well along that path right now. And then even on top of that, there's other targets on, as I mentioned, on Elida, but also at Florida Cobre. So there's a whole pipeline I see of porphyry copper potential in both our projects moving forward.
Okay, excellent. And so, as far as the roadmap, then, where are you with these projects, and where do you hope to be, say, in the next 6 months to 2 years?
Yeah, I think as we move forward on Elida with our phase 2 drill program underway, certainly the goal there looks to build on that initial resource of 322 million tons of 0.32% copper. And what's encouraging is even within that, we've identified much higher grade subset within that resource of very near surface, higher grade copper mineralization, about 34 million tons of 0.55% copper right at bedrock surface or near bedrock surface. So that's really encouraging because ultimately, as when you start to evaluate a development pathway for this, having high grade near surface is certainly advantageous. It does maximize, your potential payback or IRR, as you get into your prospective mining operations. Also at Florida Cobre, we've identified, that historical mineral resource at Florida Cobre is about 57 million tons of 0.67% copper. And that's actually what they call a supergene or copper enrichment mineralization. And that's near surface. So it provides a compelling development pathway for us going forward. And then there's a great big porphyry target there called Atravesado, which we're permitting currently and anticipate to have that, those permits in hand next year. So really, it's moving the projects, de-risking the copper deposits that we are delineating on both of these and then exploring the discovery upside that we see on them. But ultimately, a development pathway for these are going to be, these are big porphyry copper deposits. If you see, what it takes to get them into production is billions of dollars of capital to build these mines. So as we move it up the chain, that's probably not a pathway that Element 29 is going to proceed. That's a lot of capital to raise. But certainly we see our, E29's ability here is to unlock value in these and for shareholders and investors as we add value to these deposits, ultimately, painting a compelling picture for hopefully a major to come in and start to look at these with an eye for development.
Well, it sounds very exciting. So, as we wrap up here, I guess what is the takeaway that you'd like to leave investors with in regard to your company and your project?
If you look at what we're doing and what we've accomplished, I think, we've delivered on key milestones, and we still have some very significant catalysts forthcoming. We're obviously navigating very difficult equity capital markets currently, but the opportunity, I think, to unlock that value for E29 is there because, as you de-risk these projects, as you prove up copper in the deposits, certainly you should start to realize higher valuation, through the markets, and certainly that's our goal. is to unlock that value. So we're moving, and we've been successful to date, and I think we're going to continue to be successful in showing what these projects have, and showing a very significant copper resource on both these deposits.
Okay, excellent. So if people want to find you, I guess they can go online to e29copper.com. I assume you're on the Venture Exchange as well?
We are, Adrian. We're listed on the TSX Venture Exchange under the symbol ECU. We're also listed in the US on the OTC QB under the symbol EMTRF. So those are the two main listings we have to watch for.
Excellent. Well, Steve Stakiw, Element 29 Resources President and CEO, thank you for joining us on this week's CEO Spotlight.
My pleasure, and thank you, Adrian.